Want to learn about public policy with a group of curious fellow learners? Apply for the 12-week graduate certificate in public policy. Early bird deadline closes 27th July.
Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast by the Takshashila Institution. We are a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like bringing fresh perspectives to Indian affairs and Indian perspectives to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
Hello everyone, welcome to a new episode of All Things Policy. This is Swati Kalyani, your host, research analyst with the Geospatial program at the Takshashila Institution. And today I have with me Dr. Y. Nithyanandam, professor and head of Geospatial program.
Hello, Swati. It's my pleasure to be on your show again.
So your recent Geospatial Bulletin talks about, rise of solar energy harvesting in the Tibet Autonomous Region. It is actually becoming a significant hub for renewable energy. It might help China achieve its 2060 target of net zero emissions. So let's dig deeper into it. And let's start with what is the scale and the scope of China's solar power region that you came across?
See, the Tibet is one of an area in the world where the solar potential is really, really high, right? So the average elevation in this area is about 4,500 meters from the sea level. And it is known as roof of the world, right? So it has the elevation aspect. It has high insolation from the sun. Specifically, the many parts of Tibet can, receive solar energy over 5,800 to 8,400 megajoules per meter square per year. So, which is very high value. And then Tibet ranks among the sunniest regions globally with more than 3,000 hours of annual sunshine across many western areas and an average of 8,160 megajoules per meter square annually, at least in Lhasa itself. So, the potential for renewable energy harvesting exists in Tibet, and China has started leveraging it for the developments around the potential sites, and also for taking it to their own grids and probably utilizing for the development of different parts of the country. This is expected to contribute, as you said, for the net neutrality ambition to be, achieved by 2060. So when it comes to expansion, it is like where earlier plants, which are smaller in size, were found in the center of Tibet Autonomous Region, where largely deployed where the developments are happening, the military bases are happening. Now, in last few years, we have been seeing really massive plants of, at least the plants are with sizes of 30 megawatts and above. And those are there for many, developmental activities and at remote places also where no developmental activity is happening around. Perhaps it is useful for larger missions. Yeah.
I want to elaborate on that. So why, according to you, is China, focusing on these massive renewable energy infrastructure, especially because the Tibet Autonomous Region, as it's visible from maps, that it's, sensitive, it's high altitude, and it's also geopolitically contested.
Right. But then this is one of a place where they can harvest clean energy to the maximum possible level, right? It's not limited to solar energy. And here they are, leveraging wind, geothermal, and hydro, of course, which is known what is happening on the Yarlung Sangpo stretch, right? So the dams and mega dams are being planned, and the other potential ways of natural renewable energy extraction are in place. So this is something you have a place and you want to leverage it for your own benefit. So they are doing it systematically and trying to harvest to the maximum possible. As I said, in a remote place, you can find a big solar farm. What does it indicate? which says these farms are not only for the development around that area. These are all for larger goals that is based on principle wherever the potential is abundant and it is being leveraged for the development and for other purposes. So in that way, Tibet is, it's a place where you have huge renewable energy potential, not just solar, but all the other means of renewable sources. It's a hub of renewable energy, and they're using it, for in an extensive way.
How do you think this, development of solar plants and other related renewable infrastructure itself accelerate the urbanization in Tibet that's happening?
Right.
How's the demographic landscapes evolving in that particular region?
See, if anybody needs to migrate to these places, we knew that the population density of these places are not so high, right? So if China wants to accommodate more and more people in these areas, generally people has to come here as in migrated people, right? So for anybody to live in such harsh conditions, you basically need few aspects, right? Food, shelter, energy, and water. So the energy component is being supplied by this renewable energy sources, while the power grids and the power lines are extensively placed that I'm covering up with the next edition. Though it is there, but then it requires a system like this to tap the energy available at a remote areas, whatever is feasible, instead of depending on the power grid. It gives a lot of advantages, not just what you can say. It is not just for civilian purposes, but also for military purposes as well. So these things are used for the developments also around. So the developments are the first goal, and then leverage it at its own places, and also be independent and sustainable, because taking energy through grids are not sustainable, right? So in an area where geopolitically sensitive, and this is the most ideal option one have. And then when the electricity is available, it can support people who wants to live there, and also can promote activities in that region, right? You can engage in new businesses, new activities when you have energy sources available to you. So that is, I believe, the idea behind extracting energy as well.
Do you also, so as we go through the newsletter, do you also presume that there's probably a dual use potential for these renewable energy infrastructures coming up, or is it all just civilian infrastructure?
See, this is ideally to support any kind of infrastructure. So at some places we have noticed it is exclusively used for civilian purposes. That's an indication that it is being used for a small village or a town nearby where there is no sign of military activities. But few of them are exclusively used at military locations where it to lit up and to power up few equipments which are placed there. And at cities like Shigatse and Lhasa, this is there for multiple purposes. So the bigger solar plants are there. We don't know what exactly being used because it is interconnected by the power lines, right? So it is assumed to be used for both civilian and military purposes in those areas. At remote villages, in border settlements, of course, this would be quite useful and handy to operate sustainably without connecting to the main grid.
Just to explain on that, what might be these military advantages that we talk about of these infrastructure for PLA? Especially, I mean, it is along the Indo-China border, especially during probably military confrontations or those times.
Yeah, I see it in a couple of ways. The first one is, the remote post in border areas, right? Or any remote post which is not necessarily connected with road and or not facilitated with power lines and so on. Those can actually leverage this portable energy sources, right? When I call it as portable energy sources, because we are seeing portable batteries are deployed in new plants where those lithium ion batteries may be ported to a new place for leveraging energy source at remote post and so on. One. Second is, in a time of conflict, possibly countries used to target their military grids. That what we have seen in recent conflict, and what generally happens in other conflicts in the past also. People try to take the the power grids. People try to damage the infrastructure associated to it, so that the enemy will not get a necessary power to run the basic logistics, right? So here, imagine a case where the unit is functioning based on a renewable energy source. At its point, the only way to take off is to directly impact that area where the renewable energy is tapped, right? But then the larger grid, for say, in another time where cyber attacks, people take over grids and turns off grid, right, remotely. Those things are very much limited when it is localized and decentralized, right? This is something where I believe it will give it definitely an edge. And second is, tapping massive renewable energy at places will support bigger developmental projects on these lines. So there are certain road initiatives and constructions happens in remote areas. For those, transporting energy from a different place is a difficult thing. So instead, leveraging it around and then using it, perhaps it will later on attract people towards that area, and people will move towards that area where you have energy and where you have water and other resources for sustainability, right?
I think this mapping also helps in establishing, these renewable energy structures as critical infrastructure of China in the Tibet region itself.
Right.
Also, like, since it has its own criticality, as we discussed, how has India actually responded to these developments in Tibet? If not, should it be a concern at all, like currently?
See, tapping renewable energy, I think we can't object unless it is impacting us, right? So when it comes to hydro dams, it will impact our resources. So we are objecting to it for the construction of mega dam closer to India, which can create a catastrophic effect on Indian side. When it comes to solar, I think we can't do anything. People are harvesting at their own territories, or you can say contested area, but then under their control. So, uh, that is it. That's happening without anybody's restriction. The scale in which it is happening is truly a concern, because that could lead to development around an area in terms of infrastructure, in terms of settlement, build up, and so on. That may likely impact India at a larger front.
Also, these solar power plants serve as a cover for probably integrated surveillance installations or military grade communications. Might be hypothetical in that sense, but anything like this could be like complementary to these other structures.
Yeah, you can use vice versa. Perhaps sometimes you can use to figure out what's actually likely it is contributing, and at times you can find a structure which is of military potential. Takes energy from this grid. You're right. There are certain places where it's likely camouflaged to use it for other stuffs as well. But then that's not a common practice. But what interestingly is, like, why should somebody do too much of engineering efforts to harvest in a very complicated surfaces, especially on a mountain foothill, on a complicated valley, on top of tall mountains and so on. These are all requiring so much of engineering efforts, and then that also requires a lot of research and development, because once tapping renewable energy potential in these areas were challenging due to permafrost conditions, and also due to multiple other factors. But then slowly it appears China is overcoming those challenges, and with the technological advancements and integrating with heightened technologies. Those, some of them I have covered in my article. So this indicates that the challenges are overcome over the years of research on that topic, and then slowly moving ahead in tapping more and more on this area.
How do you also think it might align with China's other regional strategies? Because exactly like we have to talk about the Belt and Road Initiative, and this might also contribute, as you said, since energy supply is there, further construction might be supported much better. So how does this align with the BRI, the energy security goals of China itself?
See, this will definitely be helpful for any infrastructure project. As I said earlier, the question is if the construction or any related construction for this bigger projects happens in a particular place, what is the likely power source, right? And since the transition is to move towards green energy by 2060, they're trying to utilize all possible energy sources. The first step is like mapping it precisely on the areas that you have a footprint, and then see what are the potential that can be leveraged in a cost effective way. The only one question remains here is whether the climb of them is true or not, because sometimes the capacity of the plans are people documented as exaggerated, but is it true? So those are certain challenges that that exist. But then yes, it really benefits the bigger projects, because every power resources that they need for building up these bigger projects is meant by energy resources around, and preferably looks like from renewable energy sources.
Let's also discuss about the environmental factors associated,
Right.
because every mega projects that China has been building does have a certain consequences when it comes to the nature, and of course then the livelihood and life of the people around. What might be the resource implications of such a large scale project? And also let's touch upon the Yarlung Sangpo Dam, which is coming up probably with the solar installations as such.
See, there are two aspects of it. Let me take one at a time. So the first one is, the possible impact of the solar panels also, right? Uh, you know, it looks like the solar panels were placed in a place where it can give them maximum benefit, and in a place where the impact could be minimum to the efficiency of the plants. It's not about an environmental concern, but the efficiency of the plant. So let's say if it is on a heavily snowing area where the cleaning is required, some simple question pops out, right? Who will clean it? But there are techs to clean that. So, and there are multiple ways. There are panels which can not only take the insolation from sun, but also take the reflected one from the ground. So these are certain things which they ensured that the environmental factors around the solar panel should not be a limitation for generating it, where the focus is to keep those installations in a place where you tap the maximum potential and these environmental factors are overcome. Now when it comes to the impact of those, of course the impact of those happens in its locality. When it comes to solar panels, right, it's an the ecological impact around that area is definitely on, but it is not something as a big threat to us possibly. But when it comes to the second part, what you have said, Yarlung Sangpo is definitely a threat for us. Constructing such larger dam very close to India's border, and also putting up, since they are an upstream country, keeping this infrastructure in an area where the elevation rapidly falls thereafter is something where any mishap happens. I've been repeatedly saying this. There's very less impact probably in terms of money which was invested, will be in loss from Chinese side, whereas the kind of water which is stored or the systematic change that it is bringing to the downstream areas are the long term impact India has to face. But people argues the kind of water we are receiving at that area, or until that area from Chinese side, and what we are receiving thereafter is huge, so we don't have to worry because it's a small bucket. Right. So all these things are there, but then I will leave it to the physics aspect associated with this. It is a simple physics. We know that the elevation is a killer here, and even with a limited quantity, not compared to what we are visualizing when we look at Three Gorges Dam, this will definitely create impact on the downstream.
I think it's also important to note that since these solar plants and solar panels are huge, there is also these land use changes which happen across the region. And also, at the end, we also need to have long-term studies over the heat variations which might happen, because it's basically absorbing energy and then using it in the electricity form. So how the changes in heat probably affects this region, because it's a cold desert. It's known to host most of the glaciers that feed not just China, it's India, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal, even Pakistan to that extent. So that's another thing which might need much longer studies.
Yeah, you're right, because smaller plants, let's say below 10 megawatts within cities and other places, will not have bigger impacts. But then few other plants on Tibetan Plateau, not exactly on Tibet Autonomous Region, an extended Tibetan Plateau, those are 1 gigawatt plants also. So those plants in remote areas definitely can alter the local environment, as I said, and especially that can trigger melting of glaciers, or it will prevent the accumulation of snow and glacier in a particular area. All those things can happen, right? But then these are all can also impact the efficiency of the thing. But we should also see the recycling and the life what do you call life expectancy and the efficiency decline of the solar panels over a period of time. I'm sure they're working on it and looking at, because that's how we could see more advanced solar panels are coming up in many different new projects compared to the previous projects. But then definitely it is something where we need to look at just beyond as a resource. We need to look at the nexus between the resource and the other things around it.
Also, now, how do you think, India should rethink its own border infrastructure, its military preparedness, or even just regional diplomacy with other nations, not just with China, because it just not affects India. So probably also have these discussions with countries like Nepal or Bhutan, and should the countries respond to this?
See, but then we have our own limitation in terms of topography, right? So this would be a good idea for us also to use and power remote areas. I'm sure we are doing it with other projects and missions. But to go for projects at larger scale, perhaps the most suitable area is a place where we have in Leh Ladakh and other areas where the typical topography exists, where the elevation exists, sunshine exists, that we can tap. Uh, Say for example, the heat which is available from ground is called geothermal energy, right? A contrasting experiences observed in literature is um, mostly on our side, in Indian side, it is being used to lit up small posts or lit up small houses and so on. Whereas over there, it is harvested at a massive scale, right? So plans to generate that and further, for other purposes, it's being used. And then in one of an area, it is very close to military area as well. So the idea is you look at strategic points and you also look at what energy source available at its proximity and use it. That is why the developments are happening in very remote place where nobody can expect things to happen.
That was quite an insightful discussion, Nithyanandam. Please check out the newsletter on the same topic and learn more about this content itself. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
If you liked our show, dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs. Check us out at our Twitter handle at Takshashila INST or our website takshashila.org.in.